but if you don't ask him, he'll give you the answers anyway. Which is wonderful. So I sort of got brought into the family a bit, which was lovely.
Let's start things off by watching the title sequence. And as I said, during this, make sure that your eyes go to Paul. Okay? Let's run it.
It would, absolutely, yeah.
And it makes me think of Ian singing that song with Neil Innes.
Yeah, they did it, didn't they? They did that, yeah. Of course, it was edited for the TV program because it had another extra line in it in the middle. But it was too long for the credits, so they cut it out. But work of genius to get Bud Flanagan to sing it.
Yes.
So
good timing too, wasn't it?
Another water rights, so many water rights involved with that. It's great.
But Ian, we don't see Ian's name in a lot of those sequences, do we?
In the opening title, he wasn't there because he built himself into a main character. I know a lot of that was he thanked Arthur Lowe a lot because Arthur said to him, "What you need is you need something people will remember." He said, "Whenever I'm speaking, try and stand as close to me as possible." He said, "And go and get yourself something from props," which is where he went and got the scarf. And that's how that happened. And then David gave him more lines and things, and his part was one of those that really grew throughout the series, and he became a real main part.
What do you think he brought to that character? Because obviously it's there on the page, but there's so much of it is I'm not going to say that Ian was like Pike, but there was a common ground between them, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was. I mean, I think the best way I can describe it, but he understood Pike. He knew who Pike was, and he could be Pike. And when he had to be Pike, he was Pike. He wasn't Ian Lavender at all. And Janet was Mrs. Pike, and they were those real people. And I think that's what made the whole of Dad's Army so brilliant, because they were real. I mean, nobody ever looked at Godfrey and went, "Oh, that's Arnold Ridley." It's Godfrey, you know. And the same with Sergeant, you know, with John Le Mesurier. You know, he wasn't Sergeant, but he was John Le Mesurier. You know, he was Sergeant Wilson, not John Le Mesurier. I think that was the genius of all of that. And Ian was Pike. I mean, I've lost count of the number of times I've been walking along with Ian and somebody from the other side of the road shouted out, "Don't tell him your name." I've lost count of that. I said to Ian, way back in the 80s, I said, "Do you ever get tired of that?" He went, "How wonderful is that?" He said, "I've been given a comic character that every young comedian actor would love to have had, who will be remembered long after I've gone." He was so proud of it, and that's brilliant.
And did he always think that? Did he have the same relationship with the character? Because obviously, as we know from what Ian has told us, that many of those actors had a much more kind of itchy relationship with the series.
They did. I mean, John Le Mesurier was. I think he just enjoyed it. Just said bumbled his way through everything, which was wonderful. John Laurie, of course, still dreamed of playing Hamlet. But David Croft, to be fair, gave him little monologues and things to do, which was nice, which I know he wrote according to the parts. Arnold Ridley, and I do feel for him because I have the same, had a very weak bladder, of course. And it is true, as you know, that he kept during filming, stopping in the early days and saying to David Croft, "Could I maybe?" No. So in the end, they sort of basically said to Arthur Lowe, "Look, if he wants to go, you ask Arthur. You know, you ask Captain Mainwaring, and if you're free, he'll let you go." So that's why on a lot of the occasions, "Excuse me, Captain Mainwaring, may I go?" No, you stay there, Governor. Which meant he had a part coming up. But I don't think he ever went himself. But I did laugh at that.
And do you have much sense of how Ian felt joining this show? Because it's really early in his career, isn't it? It's like
it was basically the first major job he had, and he was fresh out of drama school, really. He had a slight advantage because his agent was, of course, Anne Croft, David Croft's wife. So I think that helped a little bit. But to be fair, I mean, Anne did tell me, and so did David, he got the part because he was right for it, and he was good. He didn't get the part because of, you know, family relations and things. But that's really how he got me in through Anne. But it was tailor-made for that part.
Did he talk much about his background, his training, and you know where he came from? What do you know about his early life?
Yeah, I mean, he nearly became a cricketer. I mean, he was a very fine wicketkeeper. I was actually on Northamptonshire's books. He was really, really good. Played cricket for the Lord's Taverners. He was a proud Lord's Taverner. But acting was always his dream. And I think he said to me, well, you dream of a role that you can get into that will take you into the business, which is what dads do. But he did other things as well. I mean, Ian did. I mean, he played a salesman in Keeping Up Appearances. You know, he was in that. He did quite a few other bits and pieces, plus a Carry On film. He did, which he didn't enjoy very much. I can't remember why he told me, something to do with somebody in the cast upset him, but I won't mention her name. But it was the lady who played opposite on that. But no, he really was truly. I said to him, you know, you are typecast as Pike, and he said, wonderful, isn't it? You know, and that I suppose is one of the things that I loved about Ian. He was so proud and grateful and excited about what he'd been given.
I think there are some actors who push against that, aren't there?
Yeah.
And there are others who are, in a way, happy to embody a certain type of personality who they're just very, very good at conveying and interpreting. So I mean, how would you characterise it? What is that kind of Lavender persona?
I think Ian away from the stage or the television, was what I call a serious person, but a seriously funny person as well. I mean, we used to sit for hours and talk about any subject, and he'd talk about the characters in Dads. He'd talk about John Laurie in particular. I mean, he was the first person who told me that he said Sergeant Wilson, Uncle Arthur, he said, was my dad. But he only found out, as it's well known, on the very last day of shooting, when Ian asked David Croft, was Sergeant Wilson my dad? He said, of course he was. Which was lovely. And he said, I sort of knew, but I'd never been able to ask him before because it wasn't the right time. He probably wouldn't have given me an answer. You know, and because it's so many things we take for granted. I mean, Mrs. Pike, all we knew was that her husband he was dead. And in fact, that was only implied. It was mentioned a couple of times she was a widow. But nobody ever queried about Ian's dad, did they, really?
Yeah. And so it sounds like he sort of held those things in his mind as he was working, but didn't. But maybe did he want to stay in the same condition of naivety that Pike occupied? To not.
Oh yeah. I think he was. I mean, he was the equivalent back then as Alice was in Vicar of Dibley.
Okay.
That's what they were, which is actually a bit brighter than you think they are, but on the other hand, outwardly stupid.
So how stupid was the stupid boy then, do you think?
Well, he was pretty stupid. Let's face it, I mean, there was one when he was in the car with the warden's niece, and she is desperately trying to seduce him, and somebody of Pike's age back then wouldn't have needed much encouragement. But I don't think Pike even knew what the bicycle sheds were. So, I mean, it was just wonderful to watch. Yeah, he was naive, I think, but that's down to his mum. That was down to Janet, who played Mrs. I mean, he was absolutely mollycoddled. It was a forerunner to Ronnie Corbett and Sorry, wasn't it, really? That's what that was. except that he was, what, 19, and Ronnie Court
That's right, he was twice the age, wasn't he? Let's see a clip from an early episode, the showing up of Corporal Jones. Let's run the clip, please. I feel like I've seen surrealist films that are done like that.
I mean, it's slapstick with voices, isn't it? It's brilliant. I love it.
It's very, very tightly characterised as well, though, isn't it? We know what those relationships are. We had that little giveaway line about what's really going on in the Pike household as well.
Yeah. I mean, everybody sort of knew that Sergeant Wilson Arthur was living there, but he managed to do it without Pike really realising, because he'd get up and go before Pike got up. But occasionally they'd say things that he sort of sussed out that Arthur was around there quite a lot. He was obviously around there an awful lot, really.
So what's your sense of the relationship between Ian and, I mean, we'll talk about, I think, all the principal cast members as we go through, but John Laurie, what about him? Were they particularly close, do you think?
Yeah, they were. You mean as their parts or in real life?
In real life.
In real life, they really were. I mean, Ian was really proud of some of the sort of scenes they had together, particularly the one where they were dressed in German uniforms. The Nazi uniforms. I must try and get that in as much as possible. And it was a great scene where they're doing some strutting around and like, it was brilliant, and Ian loved that. And then another scene that they did together. There weren't many long scenes in Dad's Island. There was a long one that he did with John when John was sort of basically telling him that, because he thought he spent the night with the warden's niece, and he was trying to say, well, some people might think that that's bad what you did, but I don't. And Ian's facial expressions are brilliant throughout that. I haven't done anything. So he was particularly proud of those moments. So that they had a good relationship on and off. I mean, you can't do scenes like the ones where they're dressed in the Nazi uniforms. The Nazi uniforms.
Some people consider this harassment, you know.
You can't do scenes like that unless you actually understand each other, understand your characters, and understand what you are, both on and off stage, you know.
And I think he often used to talk about this, but I'd be curious about what he said to you about it. The age gap between him and all of those actors, and that sense that he might have been kind of mentored by them or learned from them, or being the youngest member of that group of people with long histories behind them.
Yeah, he said he did. He said, of course, you have respect and you learn from them. He said, but I came in fresh. I had a great character and knew what my part was. But he had a lot of respect for all of the other actors. And he said they were all fascinating. He told like Arnold Ridley, who, as I mentioned before, did have a bladder problem, which was I must say, if I have to run off, by the way, I'll say, can I repeat? But he told me a lovely story, which I mentioned to you earlier about Arnold Ridley. I can't say this is 100% true because Ian wasn't sure himself. But if it's true, it's a lovely story, which is that Arnold Ridley wrote The Ghost Train, the great film, and was quite a successful playwright in his own way, and then hit on difficult times, a bit quiet period. And when they were casting for Dad's Army, it was said, I couldn't get confirmation from either Jimmy or David on this. They didn't really want to say, so I'm sort of thinking that it probably is true because they were very modest people. That Arthur Lowe, who at one of his quiet periods, way back before the Second World War. Before the Second World War. Okay. Against the Nazis. Arthur suggested to David Croft when they were casting that Arnold Ridley would be great. And Arnold, I know, actually I spoke to Arnold Ridley's son, who wrote a book on Arnold, that said that before he got that part, he was quite depressed about life. Everything was a struggle. The part gave a whole new lease of life. And I'd like to think that that is true, because it epitomises exactly what Des Army and the cast and everybody involved were all about.
Let's have a think about Ian's technique a bit more closely, and let's run the next clip. There'll be lots to talk about here. Okay, this is Private Pike.
There's two interesting things there with that last clip in particular. One is Ian's facial expressions and body movements. I mean, as you know, he was he was fascinated by silent movies. Buster Keaton was his big hero, and he used to love all the movements and body movements. And he brought that to the part of Pike. I mean, sitting in the cinema, just the moves he did was just absolutely spot on, perfect. There's another thing about that clip. If you look it up, it's on you. You look it up when you get home, because David Croft was a bit naughty. He used to see what he could try and get away with a lot to get past the BBC. And when he had a little victory, he loved that. And in that scene in the cinema, he had a little victory. So I don't know if it is possible just to show it. Is it possible to show it?
Could we show it again?
And
have the cinema sequence.
And have a look at the cinema sequence where Pamela Condell, who is Mrs. Fox.
Oh yes, look, we're getting
where she appears from.
Yes.
Behind her. Have a little look.
I think perhaps, well, shall we? Let's keep talking, and then when we get to remember
till it comes up,
because I think we all know what Rick is doing.
And Anne Croft, David's wife, Ian and I showed it to her, and she'd never noticed it before. It's a dirty bunch. But he was very good like that, David Croft. You know, he did quite a few of those what he could get away with.
That scene is, we're talking about what is it that's going on in Pike's head. Well, there's a few answers there, isn't it? It's not entirely stupidity. There's an element of terror there, isn't there? It's like he's scared.
Well, there was terror. He was scared, but also he'd been brought up very decently. You don't do things like that. He probably didn't really know what the facts of life were. Although he did in real life, that's for sure. Yeah. But no, he didn't. He didn't. Here we go. You have to look between, and it's amazing. What's
the thumb sucking as well?
The thumb sucking, yeah. This one. David, this was one of David's proudest moments. Ian said he was convinced that he was going to shut it out.
I think I need protecting.
Come on, anyway, here now. Curable. Look how the camera's placed.
Yeah,
The camera's placed perfectly. Here you go.
Hit me from behind. Do you mind being more careful the way you put your great big feet?
Priceless, isn't it? Yeah.
I suppose there would have been nothing in the script that would have not given that away. Really.
Nothing to give that away.
Yes, yeah. What was Ian's sense of humour like? How would you characterise that?
Funny. He loved to laugh.
Yeah.
He had a wonderful sense of humour, which sort of went with his character. And there was an element of Pike in it as well, but all of the other parts he played. And that humour was desperately important because from the late 80s onwards, he'd been very ill. And in fact, when I first knew Ian, well, in fact, a few years after we first met, he was diagnosed and wasn't given very long at all. And he and Mickey married really because they didn't think Ian was going to survive. And I mean, he had so many operations, but he had just great fun about it. I mean, he had more bags than Harrods at the end. He used to laugh about it, and he was remarkable. And it was humour and friendship that kept him going. And you know, he loved Mickey to bits. She was a prima ballerina at the Royal Ballet, and I think I think like all of us really, he could be a bit difficult at times, but she knew just how to handle him. I think she handled Ian better than she could handle Pike. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it was remarkable. I mean, Ian, I was with him 2 days before he passed away, and I knew it was going to be the last time I saw him, which was very sad for me. I mean, really, really, really sad. I've never had a friendship like it in my life, and I doubt whether I'll ever have another one.
How was it like that from when it started, or was that realisation something that
from
developed?
From the Gaiety Theatre onwards, we exchanged, and that was it. From that moment onwards, we had so much in common about comedy, old films, silent movies, the early days. He wanted to be a water rat, and I brought him into the Water Rats. Jimmy Perry was already there, and a few others that had been in minor parts. John Barton, who was there as well. But yeah, he was very proud of being a water rat and would have become King Rat if he'd have survived. And Bill Pertwee, of course, was another one. And in fact, in Dad's Army, the Water Rats get a mention in one thing which Jimmy Perry slipped in, which was when they were doing a keep fit thing. The Army were doing their keep fit thing, and they sort of mentioned, well, we've got to get back early because we're doing a grand thing for the Grand Order of Water Rats in London, which is really, really sweet.
We have clips that show the sort of the physical comedy side of that.
Yeah.
You mentioned Keaton and his interest in him. So let's see this. This is a clip from an episode called "The Armoured Might of Jones." Let's have the clip. It takes skill, doesn't it, to look like you're doing something and doing it in a slightly chaotic way.
Absolutely, and also the other clever thing about, in fact, all the scenes in Dad's Army, is all the other characters who are not involved in the main bit are doing something, whether it's a facial expression or moving around. I mean, it's great to watch that clip. If you get a chance to watch it again at some time, watch Arthur Lowe, watch Mannering, because he's just doing probably what he would have done if it was in real life. And that's what makes it so. It's not just the main characters; it's all the side bits that go on.
Did you think did he feel part of a unit, of a platoon?
Yeah, Ian did, and after I mean, he was good at what he did, and people like John Laurie would accept people who were good, and Ian was good, so he was accepted into it all, and I think Ian was very proud to be a part of it all. He said they used to sit, was it the Bell in Thetford after, and he said they could drink, some of them. He said, my God, we'd go on the set, he said, and David Croft and Jimmy Perry made sure they didn't have too much to say early in the shooting because they were desperately hungover and various things, which is great. You can imagine all these old boys. I mean, absolutely wonderful. And Ian was very proud to be associated with them, and they loved Ian, I know that.
That interest in silent film comedy, though, I think you can see the roots of some of these routines, can't you?
Yeah.
The platoon is often involved in some like absurd, repetitive process that they have to kind of stumble through or go through.
Yeah.
And it's there's a sort of exhausting element to it, isn't there?
You could watch that scene with Jonesy's van and all the rifles coming out. You could almost watch that as a silent movie. What they do, because of especially if you get the look on Arthur's face, the things. I mean, that's because silent movies was so much facial expressions, and there's a lot of that in Dad's Army from all of them.
What was it about Keaton that appealed to Ian, do you think?
It was quite interesting. So we discussed this a lot because Ian was a big Keaton man. I was a Laurel and Hardy man, and we used to discuss the various merits. Not in a bad way, because we both accepted they were all really, really good. But he was very knowledgeable, Harold Lloyd, all the guys. But he was mainly a Buster Keaton man. That's he answered. That was his specialist subject on Mastermind was Buster Keaton, which was a strange day, to put it mildly. Ian and I, we were both on the same Mastermind. I wanted to do Dad's Army, but they wouldn't let me because Ian was on. They said, you can't do that. So I did the books of Rick Wakeman, who wrote the Williams books and other various things like that. We get down to BBC, and Ian and I, we went down in my car, because we only lived half hour apart. So we came down, and we were arguing about arguing in a friendly way as to who was going to come last, him or me. We arrived down there and were just about to go on, and the old set for Mastermind it was very sharp edges, and the set, and we were introduced on one by one. Then Ian went on, and I was the last one to be introduced on. And just before I was going through the door to be introduced, they weren't filming at this moment. My good friend Phil Dukes just walked by, so he stopped, and we're having a chat. And then the stage man said, you're on. So I ran on, tripped over, fell into one of the corners of the metal, and just ripped my leg up, blood everywhere. It was, because you've got no skin there, you've got just bone and thing. And there was blood, it was really, really painful. And so they bring the medics on. I mean, they were all very, very sort of, probably I was really sorry, you're all right. Ian just went, trust you. And they said, I have to get you to hospital. So film is cancelled. I said, you can't do that. Just do something. So they wrapped it in tons of towels. And then the paramedics came out, and they said, we can give you some morphine. We've got some morphine. I said, all right, okay. So it was painful. So they gave me the jar and said, take some of that. And then they said, we didn't mean the whole jar. And suddenly I felt great. And I'm sitting there, Ian's going, are you all right? You really need to go to hospital. It's fine. It's really, really good. And that's when I did the naughty line in when Ian
So morphine explains you heckling from the sideline.
Yeah, I mean, I remember thinking.
Remember this, or you need to describe it? I'm just asking the audience if they remember what you did. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, Ian said, "I knew you were going to do it." It was when they asked, "And next contestant, please, and your name," and I couldn't resist it. And I thought, Mastermind being such a serious program, but they kept it in. It's actually on YouTube. And but then after so they took me to hospital. I was in there. I had 27 stitches in my leg, and I don't even remember the program at all. But it was. We've had some adventures here tonight.
Just thinking, the Mastermind theme is the sound of somebody walking with their foot in plaster towards that chair, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's see some more slapstick, please. This is a little bit of a montage. Let's go next. sort of both Chaplin and Harold Lloyd haunting those two sequences again.
Absolutely.
Inside the tree and then hanging off the clock.
I mean, one of the great things is that so many of the Dad's Army characters were around in the silent movie days, so they knew the craft very well, and David Croft was a very, very good director as well, and Ian, of course, mixed in so well because of his great love for the silent movies and all of the great people from back then. So you can see they naturally almost slipped into the part.
Yes. The way Clive Dunn was the slips on that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you consider Clive was actually one of the younger ones in the cast,
yeah.
you know, but he always played the old man, always, but he was one of the younger characters. But you know, all the little slips and the double trips and all the thing. I mean, it's all comes from slapstick.
What do you know about his relationship with Clive Dunn?
Friendly, very friendly. I mean, I think Ian sort of did the rounds on when they were out on, especially out on OBs. He would spend time with all of them at different times, which he really enjoyed. I mean, Ian had he did have a quest for thirst for knowledge, and so he would, I think, try and gain information. And he undoubtedly knew the history of every one of the other people in the cast. So he knew them well. He knew their quirks and their other sort of bits and pieces. He said it was help the aged at times. He said, and there was he said, and David and Jimmy were very respectful of the ages of some of them, the older ones like Private Godfrey, like Arnold Ridley, and so they took that all into consideration.
Do you think Ian was like the sort of the diplomat or the peacemaker in the group? Do you think he had to kind of manage some of the slightly trickier relationships?
I think he did. I think he did, certainly with people like Clive and John Laurie, but also David Croft were as well, I think. And I think they all sort of pitched into, to help look after each other in their hour of need, shall we say. And they liked it when other people come in. I mean, I know that initially Arthur Lowe wasn't keen on Bill Pertwee coming in as the warden, because everybody else had come from the stage, really, and Bill had come more from that musical family kind of thing. But that only lasted a few minutes of that because he realised how good Bill was. And Bill was the butt of everything, really, to a lot of extent. So I think they all got on, and they liked it when the odd guest came in. I liked John Martin when he came in. For that. They liked that.
Let's see Ian speaking himself now. I think part of the next bit is an interview with him. So let's run that. To that too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot. Interesting to think about the Don't Tell Him Pike. I mean, Ian always used to say, people would shout and say, don't tell him Pike, forgetting that it wasn't him who said it.
Yeah.
It was Arthur who said it. And Philip Maddock, who was a good friend as well, he used to say to me, and he said it's slightly stronger than this. He said, I've played all of the so many Shakespeare roles. I've done Hamlet, I've done Henry V, everything that I've done. And what will I be remembered for? He said it's slightly stronger than that. And I said, how do you feel about that? He said, wonderful. What a part.
And did Philip Maddock know the line that I think you're thinking about as well as...
Yeah, I mean, this should be fun. I don't want any nasty soggy chips. I want mine crisp and brown.
Slightly out of my vision, but I think I heard some heel clicking.
Well, the Nazis did that a lot.
So how did Ian feel about being sort of part of this moment in British culture? A thing that most people know. As I said, it's been on a stamp, hasn't it? It's a national catchphrase. I think if I was designing the citizenship test, this is all he would have to know. I design this and you're in.
I said to Ian, did you at the time think this is a classic moment? And he said there were a lot of classic moments, but he said something inside of me said, this is going to live forever. And he said it was quite true. He's up the top of the ladder. And he'd go, you want this ladder, Mr. Godfrey? Because he said he was as rickety as ever. But trying not to laugh was hard. I mean, like a lot of those scenes, trying to keep straight faces when they did it. But it was a beautifully constructed scene,
yes,
in every respect.
Was he a bit of a corpser? Was he a giggler?
Oh, Ian could giggle and corpse, yeah, and laugh. I mean, I did his one-man show because I was there. But it was his show. We did it at the Theatre Royal in Bury St Evans, and he asked, he said, "Will you do the question?" This is the only time where he was cross with me, really, because he had a very strict planned show that he did, the one-man show, with showing clips, and he had a series of questions that he liked to be asked on the stage. And he gave me these questions. He said, "So this is what you do. You answer these questions. You do it." I said, "Everybody knows the answers to these. Why don't we do some things that they don't know the answers for?" He said, "No, we'll stick to this. This is what we'll do." And I remember just before we went on, Mickey said to me, "Yeah, he's like this. He likes it to be just so." I thought, sod that. So we sat down and he had that wonderful smile in. I said, "Well, here we are," which was up here. And then I can't remember what it was, but I asked him a ridiculous question about one of the scenes. I think it was where did you get the staff car from the, for the scene when you went to the pictures with Bill Pertwee's, the warden's niece. And he looked at me in this look of horror. I said, "Oh, other vehicles, the Rolls Royce that was used that was painted black." And he answered it, and he got a huge laugh because I can't remember why. And then he was great. He just got the paper with all the questions on, and just threw it to one side and said, "Go on then." We could do that. That was the strength of the friendship.
It seems to me, from the times that I met him, that all the stories he told were ones that were a bit against himself. His anecdotes all involved.
I think, like a lot of people in the business, we're all you can't beat self-deprecation, especially if it's funny. And Ian had a lot of funny stories. I mean, one of the things that's little snippets I used to like to pick up bits of information when they did the cricket one with the cricket match, and they got Freddie Truman in. What the rest of the cast didn't know was Ian knew Freddie Truman, because Ian, almost becoming a professional cricketer full time, they didn't know that he knew that, and it was in the script that he was going to bowl a ball down to Arthur Lowe, who was going to try and tell them how to. And of course, Ian, apart from being a good wicketkeeper, he was a quick bowler as well. So it wasn't really meant to happen. In the script, I think it was sent down a little dolly drop, for Arthur to make a mess of. And he said, "I couldn't resist it." And he sent down a monster at 1 mile an hour, which took the stumps apart. And the look on Arthur's face was, and he said, I think Arthur said something afterwards like, I don't think you should have done that, actually. But it was, he sneaked in things when he could. The scarf and the hat, there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, we've got the scarf, we've got the famous hat." They haven't. It's in the Water Rats Museum, which is where Ian wanted it to go. So if you want to see the hat and the scarf, go to the Water Rats Museum in the Gray's Inn Road.
I remember a story he told about auditioning for Chicago. Can you tell me this?
Oh,
where he had a loose tooth.
Oh, I don't know that
It was
one.
a tooth, it was a kind of an implant that wasn't working very well. It was like a bot or a false one. And he was auditioning for Mr. Cellophane.
Yeah.
As he got to the end, the tooth flew out of his mouth and hit I don't know, probably everybody was in there, part of the story said it hit them, but it hit somebody in the interviewing panel, and he had to go and retrieve it, and I remember saying, I didn't even get the part. That seems a very typical kind of,
Yeah.
that's a typical Ian Lavender
Yeah.
bit of self-description there, I think.
Yeah, he was always telling stories against it, but he was, I don't know, but I wish I'd had a tape recorder. That shows my age, doesn't it? I wish I'd been able to record some of our many sit-down conversations. I would have loved to have had, if anybody would have shown it, a TV programme, short, 25 minutes of Wakeman and Lavender and Pike, where we just talked, because the stories that came out were astonishing. I mean, he was a very rounded actor in all respects. I mean, you know, it's easy to forget he did EastEnders,
Yeah.
you know, plus loads of. He was in Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. I mean, he was in so many different parts, but he was still Pike. You know.
I think of all the members of the cast of Dad's Army, it was John Laurie who was most important to him. And
It was, yeah.
the next set of clips are of him.
Yeah, he absolutely thought the world of John Laurie.
Let's see it. Wounds he carried with him.
Yeah, I mean, Ian was, I mean, like me, was born in the 40s, and so as you were brought up very aware of everything that had gone on in the war against the Nazis. And of course, John Laurie, you know, being, sort of heavily involved during the war, and you know, it was interesting when, Clive Dunn as well. Clive Dunn was a prisoner of war. I'm not sure, you'll probably be able to correct me on this. I believe he was captured on the first day in service. Yeah, it was spent the entire 5 years in a prisoner of war camp.
John Laurie's injuries, though, came from the Great War, didn't they?
Yeah,
or did it not involve?
The First World War, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing that's hard to recall, that they go back, to that war as well. I mean, they had real life experiences that they could bring to this. And Jimmy Perry was in the Home Guard, and Jimmy used to say that he based the written part of Pike on him in the Home Guard, but Ian, of course, he said made it his own, made Pike. He made it as an Ian Lavender's Pike, not a Jimmy Perry's Pike. Although Jimmy Perry was also in one series of Dad's Army where he played comedian Charlie Cheeseman, I think it was, and he played that part, dressed up a bit like Max Miller, and did that. Because originally Jimmy Perry wanted to play the part of Pike himself. David Cross said, "Nope, not happening." It's a lovely.
What did Ian think about that? What were Ian's reflections on that? He told you.
Basically, Ian said the right man got the part.
I think there's these events where time is pressing, but there's material that we need to show. So I want to jump into a home movie clip that will show us something more intimate. This is shot by Frank Williams. It's very short, so let's run this.
Who's this arriving at the stage door? Goodness, it's young Ian, and yes, Jack Haig saying, that's right, that's the way, in there, off you go. The cast are now in the dressing rooms. Teddy making up, making sure he's ready for the performance. Ian, of course, is already there. And he's doing the Times crossword, as he does. Yes, Ian, it's me with the camera, and the cast are ready, waiting in the wings, ready for the opening number.
Lovely, isn't it?
It was lovely, Frank.
Oh.
He was a delightful character. And of course, he played the vicar, Reverend Farley, but he was a very religious man.
Yes, he was, yes.
So that was the other great thing. They all brought something of themselves into all of their parts, which was fantastic. Yeah.
Ian's association with the programme, in a way, went beyond the programme, didn't he? Because he did the radio version, didn't he? And then he did Parsley Sidings, doesn't he? Which is somewhere in the Dan's Army universe.
Yeah, I mean, it was originally a radio programme when it was put together before Jimmy did some demos. London Calling, I think it was called originally. But when they did the radio shows later, they didn't have all of the same cast, which a lot of us great lovers of Dad's Army didn't like. I mean, for some unknown reason, it's the same in the first film as well. Janet didn't get the part of Mrs. Pike, and that upset a lot of people. Why? You know, and the same with the radio. She wasn't there as well. I mean, I like the radio series, but to me, it doesn't work as well as the visuals, because their visuals were so good. Not just the pranks they got up to, but their facial visuals and their body movements. And again, we go back to the silent movie days. They really acted with their bodies as well as, which made it great. You can't do that on radio. Well, you can, but nobody can see it.
And how do you think Ian felt about carrying this part with him?
Loved
all
it.
His life.
Loved it. I mean, he was so proud. As I said to you earlier, he said to me, every actor would have given their eye teeth to have an iconic. How many iconic parts are there? He said, and Pike is that iconic part. He loved it. And that's another thing that I loved about Ian. He was so proud of being a part of that and what he did. In the same way that David Croft and Jimmy was so proud of writing it. I must admit, I get annoyed sometimes at actors and producers and directors, writers who say, "Oh, I never watch anything I do. I never do any of that." Why not? If it's that good, be proud of it. I mean, one of the first times I went to David Croft's house in Exworth, he was in a side room with his television, watching Dad's Army, laughing his head off. And that reminded me of, I was very lucky when I lived in Switzerland. I lived very close to Charlie Chaplin, and used to go around to the house, and Charlie would watch black and white movies and the old movies and things that he'd been involved with and directed. How brilliant is that? You know, you should be proud of what you do. And Ian was proud of being Pike.
It also did something more unusual, I think, in that it gave him this association with that previous generation, with that wartime generation, and made him almost seem like a fragment of that himself, even though obviously he never lived through it in the same way. He became a spokesman for it. He read poetry, didn't he? Appeared at commemorations and events.
He did, and I think the best way I could say it is, if Ian had been alive and a young man in the turn of the century in the 20s, he'd have been a silent movie star. I'm convinced of that, because he had those expressions. He had the movements of the great stars, the Harold Lloyds, the Buster Keatons, and those. He had that, and I think I won't say he was born in the wrong generation, because he certainly was born in the right generation. What he did, but he could have been born in any generation, really.
We're going to look next at something from the final episode of Dad's Army. Now, I hope after that we might have time to throw it out to the audience. We don't have roving mics, but I'm sure that if you have a question or a thought, then you can shout it out. We can do it somehow. But let's run this clip.
I remember Ian telling me that when the cast started passing away, when they lost James Beck, And then he said a couple of others. It started to go, and people started getting really old in too many ways. And it was when, and I can't remember his name, they played the Verger.
Oh, somebody who will know this better. His name.
Sorry?
Edward Sinclair.
He said when he died, they were going out to film. He said, and David, he said, was sitting with Jimmy, John Laurie and Ian and Arthur Lowe, and he said, I think that's it. I think that's it now. We can't push it any further. And Ian said that was the moment that I knew Daz is coming to an end. And he said I realised that David and Jimmy had made every character so iconic. There wasn't a weak link in that whole team. But as they slowly passed away, you lost a link in the chain. And I said, do you think David was right? He said, yeah, he was spot on right. He said it was when Eddie Sinclair died to say, I think that's it. So watching that, seeing that it's really the only survivors, which is very poignant really when you think about it.
I want you to, in the last few minutes that we have, we've got the end title sequence to watch as we go out. But I just thought it might be worth throwing it out to you in the room here. I know that some of Ian's family are with us this morning. But could we have the house lights up? So that if you have a question for Rick or you want to say something, gosh, how many of you? I didn't realise you were all there at the back. Then do we have some mics? No, that's not the mic. Sorry, I've got the wrong glasses on. Yes, one down here.
What's your opinion of the recent film that they did in fact 2016 with Toby Jones?
Okay, opinion of the recent film in which Ian has a cameo. He does, doesn't he?
The lost episodes that they remade, the original scripts.
Okay.
With
And the lost episode remakes.
Yeah, the film that they did with Toby Jones, I did talk to Ian about it. When it was first muted, he wasn't that keen, but he thought it was excellent at the end. They gave him a cameo part. He was a general thing or whatever it was.
He got a promotion, didn't he?
Yeah, he got serious promotion. But if it was a good story, and it was done in a different way. There wasn't so much of the slapstick moments. It was more as a fun film, and I personally thought it was cast very well, and so did Ian. I mean, there was a lot of argument. We should leave it alone. Don't touch the originals. But I don't think it harmed the originals at all. I think, if anything, it brought a new audience to look at some of those. The lost episodes, which were redone. I mean, Bill and I. There's some fine actors who wanted, and they wouldn't want to do it if they didn't think it was great. So I think it was. At least they preserved the lost episodes. They preserved the scripts that were there. Do I think they are as good as all the original? No, because it's. I can't. I need to look at the original characters and see everything there were. But the film, I thought the film was fun. Had a nice happy ending, and Pike got his oats in the end. I mean, he can't. even though it wasn't Ian, he must have looked towards the general and go, why didn't that happen to me when I was
Anyone else? So you stick your hand up and I'll... Oh, one on the front row.
Am I right in thinking he worked with you when you performed the gospel?
He did. Ian did a couple of narrative things for me. I wrote an oratorio back in the 80s, late 80s, called The New Gospels, and he narrated that at 2 or 3 cathedrals that we did it in. He also did the narration for the re-recording of King Arthur, and when I did that at the O2 in 2014, he was the. It was interesting because he really wanted to do it. There's a lot of narration in that, and the only thing that concerned us both about well, Ian more than me. He said, "I'm really concerned that when I come on, I said that somebody in the is going to say it's a real serious word. Somebody's going to shout it out." I said, "It's a chance we have to take." And amazingly, nobody did. But nobody did it, and he had a great speaking voice, and we re-recorded the King Arthur album, and he's on that as well as a narrator. Yeah.
I think we might have to go to our last clip, which is the end titles, and then we'll come back to it for a kind of a final thought. But let's see the end of Dad's Army. You have been watching. The wartime generation is disappearing. The cast of Dad's Army are gone. The show will never go away, and Ian's performance will never go away. I think we kind of know what we feel about him, but I wonder, how do you think of him now? What's his place in your life now?
He was the best friend I ever had, and the best friend I will ever have. It was in all seriousness, he was the brother I never had. Scrotum and spasm were inseparable. But I think one of the clever things why it will endure forever, the whole programme, is Jimmy Perry said to me once, he said, "We latched onto something that we were amazed that other comedy writers didn't do." He said, which is called period comedy. He said, everything we did was about a period, which means, he said, and I remember him saying to me, we were sitting in the lodge of a Grand Order Water Race, this is in the 90s, and he said, if we were writing Dad's Army now, it would be exactly the same. Same costumes, same sets, because that's what it was. So it will never go out of date, because it's of a period, of a time. And that's the great thing about Pike. He was of a time. He was a great character and a period, and I can't think of anybody else who could have played the part of Pike other than my dear friend Ian.
Rick, we're so grateful that you came along to talk to us about Ian.
It's absolutely been an honour to it really has.
Ladies and gentlemen, Rick Wakeman.